Welcome, everyone, to the first ever Nerding Out with Nick Bottaford podcast on the NerdBall Fantasy Football channel. My name is Nick Bottaford. This is the inaugural show to give you guys an outline of how things are going to proceed from here. Sometimes it'll be me talking at you. Sometimes it'll be me talking with someone much smarter than myself. In this case, Mr. Clark Barnes, here to discuss the AFC West prospects for the 2021 NFL season. Clark, how are you doing?
Doing great, Nick.
Good. Happy to hear it. So we're going to try to do a little bit more of an in-depth dive than I did in the AFC West preview that is found on nerdballff.com. But I also wanted to get Clark's thoughts, on what I had to say, his critiques, where he thinks I could have done better, because I think we have a few differences as close together as we are apart, as Clark likes to say. So starting things off with the Denver Broncos strength of schedule metrics. And we get these from sharpfootballstats.com. They are excellent based on Vegas win total implications. So first things first, overall strength of schedule on a 1 to 32 scale, 1 being the easiest, 32 being the most difficult. Broncos sit at 7th. In terms of overall strength of schedule. Opposing offensive efficiency, they are 4th. Opposing defensive efficiency, they are 1st, meaning easiest. Opposing pass defense efficiency, 1st again, and opposing run defense efficiency, 2nd. So they got a fairly easy defensive schedule coming up this year. Clark, what does this mean to you?
Yeah, Nick, first of all, there's no critiques. The article you wrote for the AFC West is awesome. Even if people have different fantasy takes, a lot of great information there. With the Warren Sharp stuff, a lot of people do strength of schedule work, and some of it is very good, and some of it leaves a lot to be desired. I don't know if you've ever gone through the schedule and picked how many wins teams are going to have. Well, that's how you find if you're an optimist or a pessimist, because there's a number of wins that are going to happen, and you either get way over or way under that. But what Warren Sharp has a really good suite of analytics and does an awesome job with his strength schedule. So I think the outliers in his strength of schedule are very important. So like the first top 5 easiest, top 5 hardest, I think are super tricky. Once it gets to like the 12th most difficult versus the 19th most difficult, I don't think it matters. But the outliers are important, and apparently the entire AFC West is an outlier. They play the NFC East, so that's the Cowboys, the Eagles, those guys. And so all 4 of these teams have very favorable schedules. The metric I like to look at is just overall team efficiency, because that's just a proxy measure for is the team good or not. What really sucks is that the Broncos have the easiest schedule by a lot of these metrics, but there's a QB competition between Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock. And that just makes it the whole team. It's just such a kick in the pants that's the quarterback situation.
Yeah, for a lot of teams, this would be more of a fantasy like gold mine that has not yet been mined. But I think in this case, we're kind of searching for more diamonds in the rough than we are. Let's say if last year's Titans were playing this schedule or something like that.
One thing I do like to look at is the close to the season, because right there on the same page at sharpanalytics.com, you can find it. Google it. They show you the week-to-week schedule, and the Broncos week 14 to 17 faced Detroit, Cincinnati, Las Vegas, and the Chargers. That's a pretty good playoff run. Again, unfortunately, for the Denver Broncos.
Right. Yeah. Again, unfortunately for the Denver Broncos. So, getting into, I guess the biggest issue here is the quarterback situation. We have Teddy Bridgewater trying to unseat the incumbent Drew Lock. There are also the whispers that Aaron Rodgers or Deshaun Watson may end up here, or perhaps not whispers, but outside chance that they could end up here. Clark, what are your thoughts on the immediate QB battle, and then on the rumor aspect to the position?
The QB battle is tough because Drew Lock is a second round quarterback, and big arm, kind of, this is what people said about him coming out of the draft. Big arm, maybe not the fastest processor, maybe needs a little bit of refinement. And so far, that's what we've seen in his career. He's got an awesome arm. He can make some really great throws. Doesn't seem to pick defenses apart, kind of going to where they are weak. That doesn't really seem to be his game. And he just doesn't look quick out there. And that can all change, but it's just, you're looking at like the 25th, 26th best quarterback in the league, maybe. And then you have Teddy Bridgewater, who, in my opinion, is an absolute lights out backup quarterback. He is he's a really important part to your team because he is a QB who can come in for 3 or 4 games and sustain your team's momentum, or at least not kill you. But we saw all year last year a very similar situation in Denver with Bridgewater in Carolina, absolutely surrounded by weapons. Really creative coaching staff. It was his team and his game, to run away with, and he just didn't. He played super conservatively. I know the Panthers lost McCaffrey, but there's a lot of talent in Carolina, and he was just very ho-hum and very disappointing for fantasy owners who had high hopes for DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. And that's going to be the same kind of situation we're in Denver, where Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy are very good, but is Teddy Bridgewater going to add anything to their value?
Yeah, so I do think that drafters of one of those two players might end up getting burned. Before we move on to the which wideout do you want? Do you think that there's any chance that Rodgers or Watson end up here, or is this all just off-season chatter?
I don't. Well, sorry, Rodgers, no. But the Texans are kind of that crazy drunk ex-girlfriend franchise where you just don't know. All bets are off. You have no idea what's going to happen in Houston.
Yeah, they've shown sporadic decision making, and even the cleaning house and the replacement players that they've brought in this offseason are underwhelming, I think, to say the least. So we have no idea what they're going to do. I think that's fair. I think maybe specifically for people who are volume drafting, they're doing a lot of like $5 best ball entries, that kind of stuff. I think that drafting some of these Broncos pass catchers as though there is the possibility of one of these two quarterbacks is coming here, but for your home league and folks who are keeping their league totals to a manageable number, playing as though Sutton is going to be catching passes from Watson or Rodgers is probably a losing proposition. So with that said, what do you think the outlook of Cortland Sutton for 2021 is if it's Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater at the helm? And also, do you have a guy that you think is going to win that battle? I think it's going to be Teddy.
Yeah, I think Teddy, if it's a straight up choice between Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock, Teddy Bridgewater, while not exciting, doesn't make a lot of brash decisions either. And when you're choosing between I'm using air quotes here, gunslinger who's not an especially good gunslinger versus a really conservative check down on third down and punt quarterback, I think coaches just have a really hard time not at least going with the conservative guy in that situation. I think they're both about the same. Really, like if I was running the team, I'd run Drew Lock out there and hope he got hot.
Okay.
But
okay.
I mean, it's really close.
Yeah. Are any of the ancillary players, so like Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant, Hamler, any of these guys drawing interest?
No, so to hit on Sutton really quick, he's going in the 7th. So that means, I don't think you should draft your roster, meaning like if value is there, take the value. But if you are drafting your roster, which is, not a terrible idea, it's just I don't like to do it. Sutton's going in the 7th round. He's going to be your wide receiver 3, kind of after you've drafted everyone else. That's a really good bet to take, just because I feel like Cortland Sutton is very good. And even with Teddy Bridgewater, we saw the Carolina receivers have good games last year. They just weren't incredibly consistent. The ancillary players, Noah Fant, yeah, just because the tight end landscape is so barren after the top 3, or I shouldn't say barren. This is after the top 3, there's 9 guys that could all be number 4 and no one would be surprised. But Jerry Jeudy, as much as I love the player, just to know, I don't think that the offense is going to want to consistently enough support 2 wide receivers for us in fantasy to spend even the 12th round pick that it would take to get Jerry Jeudy.
So yeah, on the Sutton point, I mean, this dude, so he played per PFF's trademark stat, yards per out run. He played like a wide receiver one in 2019 when he had a full season of health. He ran 2.08.
He's really good.
He's
yeah.
He's very good. He had the 12th highest yards per out run. So ipso facto, wide receiver one, right? For those concerned about his ACL recovery, from what I've been able to learn, I lean on guys like Dr. Edwin Porras. From him, it looks like there's like a 10% soft tissue injury rate post ACL reconstruction, and he's going to be in the time frame where like he's at a very low, by the time the season comes around, there's really not that big of a concern that he's going to injure or re-injure that ACL. The re-injury rates are very low at that point in time. The hamstring, so he could pull, he's got like a 10% elevated risk of pulling a hamstring, which, hey, that's 10% more than someone else, but it's probably not going to make me shy away from drafting him in the 7th round. When it comes to Jeudy, I mean, the dude, like, we know him by looking at him, the way that he runs his routes. He looks like a stellar route runner. I was kind of surprised that he produced the 5th highest or 5th lowest, I guess, of the top 5 on the yards per route run scale of all the other rookies. But, that's comparing him to guys like Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb, who look like stalwarts of the NFL for years to come now. So I probably shouldn't knock him too hard in that regard. But I do think, to your point, it's going to be kind of difficult for him to reliably put up fantasy-worthy stats with Courtland Sutton there. Moving on to the backfield, going into writing this piece, or at the conclusion of writing this piece, I was pretty high on Javonte Williams, and I wasn't going into it. I thought Gordon was going to be there to either keep the rookie off for a bit, or not sure. I mean, I think that there's a chance he had that DUI last year and he didn't show up to OTAs so far, which, they draft a 2nd round back and he doesn't show up to OTAs. I'm thinking that there's a chance that he may get kind of strangely cut a la Leonard Fournette last year, where like there's some rumblings about it. We don't know. Javonte Williams, he's well liked by a guy that both you and I respect, who I think you're more familiar with, Matt Waldman. But the last thing I did when I finished this up, I was listening to a conversation between what's his name, Drake and Dwayne McFarland on the Fantasy Football Hustle, and McFarland did all this research on incoming 2nd round backs who try to compete with incumbents, and the list of successful backs who finished in the top 36 are very small. Like, the only guy as of late was Jonathan Taylor, and he got helped by Marlon Mack tearing his ACL. So I personally feel, I mean, I love the schedule, but I'm really up in the air on what I think Javonte Williams actually brings to the table as a fantasy prospect in 2021. Where do you have him?
Yeah, I'm also very excited about Javonte Williams. That's an interesting note about 2nd round backs coming in, because the 2nd round to, I think I just started Dynasty 2 years ago. And so not extremely experienced. More on that later. I think Nick and I are going to own a Dynasty team together this year. 2nd round rookie backs to us, to fantasy, that's awesome, because that's a lot of draft capital to spend on a running back. So obviously that's someone you want. But they don't always come in right away and perform like Saquon Barkley or Ezekiel Elliott, like top 10, top 15 picks. There's a big difference between that and the 2nd round, apparently. I think Javonte Williams is really talented. Unfortunately, as much as someone might laugh at this, like, Melvin Gordon's pretty good too. He's just a very solid veteran back. And I think it's going to be similar to that quarterback decision of, we have this really safe guy who's been doing this for a long time, and we may not get as many big plays out of him, but he'll be in the right spot in Melvin Gordon, versus this just, tornado of elbows and knees and running people over Javonte Williams, who, went middle of the 2nd round because there's some questions, and because, he may need a little time to develop into an NFL running back, which is not a knock against him. But I feel like drafting both of these guys is pretty cheap right now. That may change with people getting hyped up about Javonte Williams, but I think Melvin Gordon's like a 5th or 6th round pick, and Javonte Williams is 7th or 8th. It's not a bad idea just to draft both, or maybe 5th and 6th. I wrote it down.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think that for people who want to try to play 3D chess and who are doing the volume drafting thing, if that's your shtick, there is the preseason darling Mike Boone, who is now fighting Royce Freeman for the number 3 back roster spot. If by some miracle Melvin Gordon ends up off the team, you may end up with the number 2 back in Mike Boone with like the last pick in your draft. But again, that's for people who are in a lot of best ball leagues and not really applicable to anyone who's just, studying for their home league. Moving on to the Kansas City Chiefs, who have the overall 20th in terms of overall strength of schedule. They come in number 20, but my goodness, so their overall offensive efficiency for their opponents is just 7th, so 7th easiest. Opposing defensive efficiency also 7th. Opposing pass defense efficiency 8th, and opposing run defense efficiency 3rd. This might end up being a very short conversation, Clark, but with the strength of schedule metrics, what do you think of the Kansas City Chiefs prospects for 2021?
Yeah, I talked a little bit about at the open with how I look at the strength of schedule stuff from Sharp. The outliers matter, and to refine that a little bit, the outlier matters for questionable teams. So like Denver's not going to be very good, maybe, but they have the easiest schedule, so maybe that's awesome. I don't care what Green Bay's strength of schedule is or what Kansas City's strength of schedule is. Like, they are extremely good. Like, they are setting the market. How good their opponent is, I don't think is going to dictate the kind of offense that they run there. So I don't care about the strength of schedule. The Chiefs, I can't be more in on the Chiefs.
Yeah. Okay. So with that said, I want to talk about one of your favorite guys, Travis Kelce. Last year, he was 5th, 2nd, and let's put it this way, top 5 in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns across all positions. So do you want to make the very brief case as to why Travis Kelce is worthy of a first-round fantasy pick?
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe even the number 2 pick, because Christian McCaffrey, when he plays, is like another player on your roster. He scores so much more than the next guy that you're starting 2 running backs with Christian McCaffrey against your opponent's 1 guy. And Travis Kelce does that at the tight end position. You go in, fantasy is a week-to-week game for most intents and purposes, right? You're going into every matchup you have with Travis Kelce, except for one with like a 12-point advantage over your opponent, because he's a focal piece of that offense. He scores touchdowns. He has high volume for PPR. He's extremely good. You're not going to find tight end talent on the waiver wire, halfway through the season that's going to get you 100 yards and a touchdown consistently throughout the year like Travis Kelce will. Whereas wide receivers and running backs come up on the waiver wire all the time. You can make hits on wide receivers and running backs in later rounds. You're just really locking in a hyper scarce resource with Kelce, number 1, that gives you an advantage of everyone over your league, except for the guy who drafts Waller, who's like sort of even with you.
Yeah, and I think kind of furthering his mystique, I'm pulling up his, he's missed 1 game in the last 3 years. Like he's not just a big time scorer, he's also extremely durable. So it's hard to go wrong. And I like the case for drafting him as a top 5 pick, not just as a first round pick overall. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think underwhelmed a little bit just given where he was being drafted last year, but he was injured for a number of games. And I know he said for the Chiefs, strength of schedule doesn't really matter. I do think that his prospects are helped though, given that he's going against the 3rd least efficient slate of run defenses this year with CEH. So in the first 3 rounds, we have Mahomes, Kelce, CEH, and Tyreek Hill coming off the board. If you're trying to go for, and I know you said you don't like roster construction per se, but given that it's the Chiefs, do you have a preferred trio if you're trying to create a Chief stack here?
Yeah, if someone said I get to pick, well, then I'll take Kelce over Tyreek Hill.
Okay.
It won't work out like this in your draft. If I could get Tyreek Hill and Kelce, Tyreek Hill is in fantasy good enough to make me consider it, even though I'm not especially excited about having that combination. But I'm all in on CEH. I think the narrative that CEH was disappointing or had a bad year last year is true only in that we got so excited about him. We expected him to be like the running back 3 and so he disappointed us. He looked very good, and I feel like it's not like his situation got worse, or they drafted another running back in the second round or brought somebody in. They let everybody go. So I will be picking Edwards-Helaire in every second round of my draft probably this season.
Yeah, I like that. As you mentioned, Le'Veon Bell is gone now, and he did clear 1,000 yards from. He put up exactly 1,100 yards from scrimmage, only 5 touchdowns. But I think with a little bit of positive regression, he will find pay dirt a few more times. In terms of the guys behind him, do you have a preference? Darrell Williams, Darwin Thompson? Is that format specific?
I have the roster spot. I'm definitely going to take Darrell Williams as a handcuff. I'm not a huge handcuff advocate, but this is a situation that is so fruitful and has such a clear backup who is free. It's not an Alexander Madison of 2 years ago situation where you've got to spend like a 7th or an 8th. Darrell Williams is free, 12th, 13th round. So I would take Williams and handcuff him. I really like Darwin Thompson, and he's gotten to play a little bit, but he's clearly the third man also. So, no need to draft him. Maybe keep an eye out for him. If Edwards-Helaire does go down, then I would pick up Darwin for sure.
Okay. Last but not least here. So when I sent you these questions, there were questions about the number 2 receiver spot, but since then we have had confirmation that Mecole Hardman is going to start training camp as the seeded number 2 receiver. Do you have any thoughts on Hardman? Are you in? I know you've been in on him previously.
He's worth taking a shot on, but all of them are. So, and by all of them, I mean Mecole Hardman, Byron Pringle, and the other man.
Yeah, Demarcus Robinson.
There you go. Yeah, they're all okay. They all have a different skill sets, and Kansas City doesn't need a second wide receiver because they have Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and then good running backs. But if someone steps up into that role, we're all going to be very excited. So I'll be taking a shot on one of them, probably Byron Pringle, just because he's the cheapest. But saying someone's the cheapest because he's a 17th rounder versus a 14th rounder, like who cares? Just pick one of them. And then 3 weeks into the year, you'll know if you got the guy or not.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Moving on to the Raiders. Again, strength of schedule. 1 is easiest, 32 most difficult. Overall strength of schedule, 30th. Oof. Opposing in terms of opposing offensive efficiency, first overall. In terms of opposing defensive efficiency, 26th. Opposing pass defense efficiency, 27th. Opposing run defense efficiency, 6th. Very briefly, Derek Carr has 1 more year on his deal after this season. Do you think he's here for the long haul, or is it just like a last ride kind of thing?
I love human behavior, psychology degree. People just fascinate me. And so I try to, investigate myself all the time too. And so I'm very guilty of this, but we trick ourselves into thinking we are pretty good at prognosticating what's going to happen with the NFL. And we're not very good at it, but there's still varying degrees of being able to predict, like, I bet the Chiefs pass a lot and that Patrick Mahomes is going to be there. And then when Andy Reid says Mecole Hardman is getting a shot, he's going to get a shot. Right. But then there are teams like the Raiders where you just don't have any idea what's going to go on. I don't think that they're going to get a better quarterback than Derek Carr picking 18, 19, 20. He's okay. But what John Gruden is going to do is I have no idea.
Yeah. If I have to put money on anything, I think it's going to be that he's just going to sell the farm to try to get someone via trade or sign someone unworthy in free agency.
I mean, after they blew up their offensive line this offseason, and like sometimes it makes sense because you don't have the money or because you get a bunch of stuff back. But just when everyone's baffled, then truly odd move.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on from the quarterback position to their number 1 pass catcher, Darren Waller, who would have finished if you stripped away the positional positional categorization. Waller would have finished as both the wide receiver 8 and running back 8 in half-point PPR last year. Where do you draft Waller?
That's nuts. He's going in the 3rd, and if I get him late in the 2nd, because I have 3 or 4 running backs that I would take in front of Kelce. So Kelce is probably like my 5th or 6th guy. But if I miss on Kelsey and am able to get Waller, I'm very excited in the second.
Yeah.
And this is for, I need to point out, this is for teams that force you to play, leagues that force you to play a tight end. I mean, yeah.
I, up until really like this offseason, was very much a late round tight end guy, but you have been a huge part of this. I am convinced now that some of these guys, just looking at it from the terms of like removing their positional designations, and you're looking at like, he's a top 10 wide receiver or running back. I hadn't conceptualized it like that. And when you're just trying to cram as many points into your starting lineup as possible, you need to forget the positional designation, perhaps outside of quarterback to some degree, and just go like with these tight ends who are going to put up numbers a la the wide receiver 8. As far as really like the rest of this roster goes, because there's really only a handful of guys that I think are worthy of our attention here. The biggest name, Josh Jacobs. We see, with the strength of schedule, again, the run defense slate is the 6th softest in the NFL, but every year John Gruden says that Josh Jacobs, I mean, he's going to get pass catching utilization. In his rookie season, he was saying he's going to take wildcat quarterback snaps. He got me all pumped up on that. Since then, I've become very wary. One, because of what I've seen, but then two, because of the way that the Raiders choose to spend their money, which is signing guys like Theo Riddick last year and now this year investing serious money in Kenyon Drake. Where are you on Josh Jacobs?
I can't take him where he's going, but I this is why I don't like the Raiders. I feel like Josh Jacobs is very good. I mean, I watch him play. It looks like he's doing everything that he's supposed to. He looks athletic. He looks big. He plays apparently through tremendously bad injuries, like a running back with shoulder injuries who's still getting stuffed into the back of the line 20 times a game. Just, I don't know what else a running back could do. I haven't seen him look deficient at anything. And it seems like John Gruden just doesn't like him. So I can't take him.
Yeah, for whatever reason, he doesn't seem to trust him. It's a shame. I will say I don't want Kenyon Drake on like any roster. As you said, Jacobs plays through injury like crazy, and the only way that Kenyon Drake is going to see enough work, I think, to have serious standalone value is if Jacobs is out. But if he's not going out, then the whole backfield is in a void for me. Last season, we were all excited about Henry Ruggs, and then Nelson Aguilar just like took his role. John Gruden and Mike Mayock then immediately replaced the departed Nelson Aguilar within like 2 or 3 days of him leaving with John Brown, who is, Nelson Aguilar before Nelson Aguilar was Nelson Aguilar. Where are we with Ruggs? Are we interested in Ruggs? Do we just default to going with John Brown instead? What do you think?
Ruggs in the 12th is a shot I'm taking, especially in a lot of dynasty leagues, just because he has a first-round pick from Alabama. Really fast. I don't know. I don't go back and watch, the coaches' film for too many games, but you really have to for the wide receivers, and I haven't with the Raiders because I don't want to watch the Raiders. They're not any good. But first-round pedigree. Who else is there? 12th round ADP. I've been taking shots on Ruggs all offseason.
I like it. And I don't think that going after Ruggs from time to time should dissuade people from going after John Brown too. If Gruden figures his stuff out, they didn't throw to Ruggs around the line of scrimmage. Like he's a great downfield receiver, but the dude can house a screen pass, and they really were not throwing to him shallow at all last year. Maybe the thing that they need to do is just put Brown in the downfield role all time and let Ruggs operate in the short to intermediate areas. I don't know, but as you said, 12th round pick, you probably can't go wrong with him. Moving on to the LA Chargers, overall strength of schedule, they come in 11th overall offensive, the opposing offensive efficiency 5th, opposing defensive efficiency 4th, opposing pass defense efficiency 13th, opposing run defense efficiency 1st. I am extremely high on this team, both from a coaching standpoint with the exit of Anthony Lynn and the replacement of Brandon Staley. I am quite excited about Joe Lombardi. I think you expressed a little bit of hesitancy to me about Lombardi pre-show. Can you elaborate on that and how you think that this plays into the or mixes with the strength of schedule metrics?
Yeah, it's just an unknown. And I think in preparation for this podcast, I went and watched a couple of Chargers games and came to some conclusions.
Okay.
I'm not going to have any more Austin Eckler arguments while there's other guys who I like going in that area. If I end up stuck with Austin Eckler at like 210, I'm going to be very happy. So changed my take on that. He's not that small, apparently. I thought he was a very small guy, but he's like 5'10", but more importantly, doesn't look small when he's out there and playing. The Joe Lombardi thing, he's just been an assistant for a long time, had a little time in Detroit during the Joik Bell and Amir Abdullah years in 2014 and 2015. We'll see. I don't think we have enough data to really know. He comes from a Saints offense that is absolutely 100% Peyton and 100% Peyton. So I don't know. The change to someone who's maybe a little bit more exciting than Ken Wisenhunt, I think could be positive. Really surprised with how well Herbert played. And God, it seems like the expectations are super high to expect him to repeat that. But I'm still really only excited about Keenan Allen on the Chargers. I think I'm just old and set in my ways about the Chargers.
That's fair. So I guess Joe Lombardi, while he's in New Orleans, as you said, under Sean Payton, he's working as the quarterback's coach. And these are just things that happened while he was there. Breeze leads the league in 2016 with 5,200 passing yards. Michael Thomas leads the league in receptions in 2018. He then sets the single season record with 149 receptions in 2019. Kamara racks up 81, 81, and 83 receptions. These statistics cannot be credited to Joe Lombardi, but what I really like is the personnel similarities between the Saints roster and the Los Angeles Chargers roster. You have an inside-outside receiver with Michael Thomas. You have that same thing here with Keenan Allen. You've got the dual threat running back. News that broke a little while ago, though, was that the team intends to use, they made this comparison, Mike Williams as the X receiver like Michael Thomas. That surprised me because I figured that Keenan Allen was kind of just going to take over that role. Do you have any thoughts on the roles that these two receivers will play? I know you just said that you like Keenan more than anything, but yeah, any expanded thoughts?
No, I don't care about the positional thing. Even with uncreative coaching staffs, Keenan Allen has run out of a lot of different positions. Let's see, it was playerprofiler.com just gave it a quick look. Last year, Allen ran 50% of his routes from the slot. So he's just a wide receiver that they move around. I think it will benefit Mike Williams to move to the X because he is a very traditional giant who's fast and can really go up and get it. So I think playing Williams in the X will benefit Williams and have zero impact on Keenan Allen.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I like that. As far as Justin Herbert goes, yeah, I mean, what the guy accomplished last year, offensive rookie of the year honors. He set the passing touchdown record as a rookie. The youngest player to ever throw 30 touchdowns. He set the overall rookie touchdown record with 36. He was 39 yards short of the rookie passing record, period. And he did all this playing in Anthony Lynn's system with, Ken Wisenhunt. And he wasn't even getting first team reps in the preseason, right? That was all Tyrod Taylor. And then a very strange occurrence with a needle and a lung derailed his 2020. The fact that he did this with no prep, for me, it's wheels up. There are some statistics that folks are pointing to in terms of like Herbert excelled under pressure, but wasn't so good in a clean pocket. And I'll post the link in the show notes, but long time.
That's a fine problem to have.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Being able to pass under pressure. So props to Andrew Schuba, a longtime listener of our podcast, Back with Fake Teams. He sent me some data that suggested there actually isn't any correlation between like failure with a clean pocket in the future. But to your point, yeah, I think the thing to take away from this is the dude can play under pressure, and he did so as a rookie. That's extremely impressive to me. So I have Herbert ranked as this year's quarterback 5. I'm all in on the dude. I'm really excited to see where he goes with an analytically inclined coaching staff. Do you have? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I went back and looked at my rank of Herbert, and I have him at 14, and I thought I was being generous, but it's just going to change again. Watched a couple more games, and stats are important. They're pieces of information, and we take a lot of pieces of information and form them all, into our ultimate take on whether or not we're going to have the player or invest in them at what they cost. And you saw the stats with Herbert's, and that's impressive. Period. No matter what, putting up those numbers through 15 games, it's not a 4-game projection out to what a season would be. Teams saw him, they knew what was coming, and he still performed. He put up really good numbers against good teams. That's something that I look at. Are you scoring 45 points against the Jaguars, or are you hanging in there with the Ravens?
Yeah,
that matters. It's a team game. It's perhaps the most team game of team games, but there are some other quarterbacks that are getting a lot of love right now that did really well against horrible teams like Dallas and Arizona, whereas Herbert looked good just all around. So I wanted to throw that out there too, and just say that, I almost always try to temper expectations and dampen the hype, but man, Justin Herbert may be an exception to that. He may just be total wheels up in year 2.
Cool. So do you have anyone outside of those 2 main wide receivers, and tight ends included, that you're interested in?
No, I mean, like I said, if I get stuck with Eckler late in the second round, I'll be very happy with that. The tight end situation is interesting to watch because Jared Cook is a big name who I don't think has it anymore. Donald Parham is 6'8", and he does not look like he's 6'8", because sometimes 6'8" guys look lumbering and awkward when they're running, and he doesn't. So that's a very exciting name who San Diego has, or the Chargers have a history of finding tight ends out of nowhere, perhaps just because of one guy.
Sure.
But they do have that history. And so I'm taking Parham in the last round of my drafts, pretty frequently.
Cool. I love it. Yeah. He tore it up in the XFL, all 6 feet, 8 inches of him. So I do think that it's worthwhile to throw a late round flyer, on one of these downfield receivers. So they've got a bunch of guys coming up, who are going to need to have their contracts renewed or terminated or, released. Mike Williams, his contract, I think, is up at the end of this year. Same thing with Jalen Guyton, and Tyron Johnson may have like 1 extra year on it, but they're going to need to find someone to operate in this pure downfield role. So whether that's one of the guys that I just mentioned, or Joe Reed from last year, or their 2021 draftee, Josh Palmer, I think any of these guys are worthwhile because they're going to want to see what they have. If they're going to let Mike Williams walk. So some guy is going to either separate, I liked what I saw out of Jalen Guyton last year. I liked what I saw out of Tyron Johnson too. So I think using a really late round pick on one of these guys who's going to operate as the downfield receiver, either in the future or just taking reps from Williams this year, I like him a lot. Just looking at a purely strength of schedule kind of pick, as we mentioned, their opposing slate of run defenses is really bad, or good for them. Last year, we had Josh Kelly flashed early in the season, and then Justin Jackson ended up taking over as the number 2 for a while. If this strength of schedule allows them to get up early a lot, and this new coaching staff allows them to get up there early a lot as well, I think that there's going to be room for a number 2 running back in the mix. Personally, I'm very high on Justin Jackson, although there were rumors that he is on the roster bubble. But some folks are high on 2021 draft pick Larry Roundtree, which I don't get, because looking at his like just athletic ability, I mean, he's kind of on par with like tight ends and some athletic offensive linemen. So I don't see this guy. I see his athleticism as being prohibitive. It's so bad. Between Kelly and Jackson, is there anyone that you like, or for you, is it just throwing darts or bypassing completely?
No, I mean, they both looked good. And I hate to give that answer, but it's just, whoever comes in second in the preseason, if it's the same guy in both games, I guess there's 3 preseason games this year. So I guess teams will play as though 2 matter. that's what I'll be looking at. I think that there's going to be plenty of opportunity here, not because Eckler will need to be spelled, but just if the offense is going to be as explosive as, just as it was last year, there was room at times for multiple backs. I just don't have any idea who it is because Eckler's clearly the best. And then Jackson and Kelly both looked okay at times, and then they both looked bad. Like they both looked slow and like they needed to be replaced also.
Yeah, Jackson got hurt, and I think Kelly kind of just got, he had a one trick that worked for a week or two early on, and then hit understandable rookie wall. Unless you got any final thoughts, Clark, we've done it. We've broken down the AFC West, and no one ever has to listen to another podcast on this again. Seriously, thank you. I had a great time, and I really appreciate you being my first guest. And tune in, everyone, because we're going to continue to break down each division as the weeks go on. Hopefully,
man. Thanks for having me. We talked about a lot, but y'all go out and read Nick's primer if you haven't over at nerdballff.com. He goes, he does the positional preview thing, but also has a lot of other really good nuggets in there. And thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Thanks, Clark. See you guys later.